And this is News Central's special broadcast commemorating Nigeria's Democracy Day 2021. Started off touching base with our correspondents across the country in Lagos, in Abuja. We've touched base as well with what's happening in Ibadan and elsewhere, looking at the security situation. And we got straight into conversations on security with some security consultants. And now it is to politics. How do you talk democracy without politics? It's almost impossible. Joining us now, we have Comrade Adewale Ayodele. He's the immediate past chairman of Amuwo Odofin local government and also a political analyst. He is with us here. We also have Segun Sowunmi, who's a politician, who's also joining us via the internet, or Zoom, as you want to call it. And also joining us, we have Yemi Adamalekun. She's the executive director of Enough is Enough Nigeria, a coalition of civil society groups in the country. Gentlemen and lady, thank you so much for joining us as we take a look at the political situation of Nigeria as the country celebrates its Democracy Day. Let me start with this, because I think it's a very big question that I would like to hear from all three of you. And that question is right now, do you think Nigeria is operating a democratic government, a democratic structure? Yemi, let me start with you.
Good afternoon, good morning rather, and thank you for having me. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Is Nigeria operating a democratic structure? Yeah, on paper, we're a democracy. We go out to vote every 4 years, and we have laws that guide our democracy. But the truth is, in practice, I'm not quite sure, maybe aside for those in government, officially, when they speak officially, who would say that we are operating a democracy. Because you can't really, a major tenet of a democracy is rule of law. And if I just use that alone as an example, actually, no, I'll use two. One is rule of law, which we don't have. Our Attorney General and Minister of Justice is, his lawyer comrades are struggling, his lawyer colleagues rather, are struggling with his interpretation of how he interprets and uses the law. And that tells you a lot. And everything from the fight against corruption that's ended up on one leg to the fact that our courts have to fight for what's in the Constitution. So our Constitution allows for autonomy of the legislative and judicial arm, but it's not being implemented. And so judicial workers have to go on strike for 2 months to get what is in the Constitution enforced. Same thing for local government autonomy as well. So I think if we just look at in that context, and that's huge. If you have a country where contracts are not honored, where the government can wake up one day and choose to interpret the law however it deems fit, it doesn't set the tone for confidence from citizens and even people who might want to invest in the country. So that's one bit. Another tenet of a democracy is freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of expression. And those are three things that this administration has fought heavily and continues to fight, even with the recent Twitter ban. So yes, on paper, we're a democracy, but in practice, we're not.
Comrade Adewale, do you agree with her? She says Nigeria's democracy is on paper and not in practice.
Well, I will not totally agree with what she has said. I will partly agree that the application of principles of democracy is what we've not really put fully in force. If you look at some part of the country, some states in the country, you will see that they've embraced, not fully though, but at least about 70% of the principles that guides democracy. We look more on the rule of law, and particularly because the states itself are not allowed to practice full federalism. As much as we can't practice full federalism, then you say that our democracy is still at its teething stage.
All right, and Segun Sowunmi, as your opening salvo into this conversation, what are your thoughts about the practice of democracy in Nigeria?
You know, I've asked myself many times that, is there a democratic model that all countries strive to as to those things they would like to see? It's difficult to say there is, because they are in democracy because everybody is in one form of democracy or the other. In the case of our own Nigerian style democracy, I want to align myself completely with Ms. Adamalekun. Why? She has pinned down certain areas that if we worked on, we will find out that the democracy will begin to have percolating effect almost everything we do. Having said that, the other thing I would like to say is that the most important, if you ask me, opportunities that the people have in a democracy is truly the freedom of expression. Because it doesn't matter what style of government you're having, people will have one opinion or the other. They will have reasons why they want to agitate, maybe even protest and all that. Once you begin to attack those areas, you are already ebbing them out of the democracy and you are ebbing them into some kind of civilian dictatorship. Once you take the position that when people protest, the best thing you can do is call out another arm of government, which is the police and the military, to go in there heavily with whatever they know how to do, you are not allowing democracy. Once you determine for yourself that a platform that young people play, say Twitter now, that your reaction to whatever it is that you want to call regulation there is to reduce your vexation to a tweet of one individual, no matter how highly in any country, to be the reason why the mass of the people or even the whole of the population must suffer, then you have to know that in principle and in practice, you are not moving well. And I will add very quickly, during the last regime of Jonathan, it is now that we're beginning to appreciate that the liberties, the freedom, the right of association, the deepening of the political process is not as easy or can be taken for granted, because we are watching that, yes, in a democracy, one party can win today, another one will win tomorrow and all that. We're watching and we're seeing that almost all of those things we took for granted in terms of our rights, our freedoms and all of that have significantly become attacked. But I would say the activities of one government does not form the whole story on democracy. For us to be able to appreciate where we are or how well we have moved, we must look at it from the fact that we moved from a purely military system of government to a democracy. And in that democracy, we were in a situation where one party seemed to win all the time, until we got to a point where an alternative free transfer of power between one political party and another via an election, no matter what you want to say about the freedom, the fairness, and the transparency of the process, that happened. Now we are at a point where we must now begin to figure out what we need to do to improve and deepen and sustain the process. But obviously, we seem to be limping in that score. So for me, my alignment is with Mr. Adamalekun.
All right.
And talking about improvements, it's 22 years into the Fourth Republic. The general consensus out there is that Nigerians are not really reaping the dividends of democracy. There are a few fault lines here and there. Yemi, what would you say is our biggest undoing in the past 22 years? And what areas should we prioritize in order to get more from this democratic experience?
Sorry, I missed that question. You said, what is our biggest what?
Yeah, what are the fault lines? It's been 22 years into the Fourth Republic, and the general consensus is that a lot of Nigerians are not reaping the dividends of democracy. It doesn't reflect the yearnings and aspirations of the majority of the people. What are our biggest undoings, and what do we need to do to get things better?
And in context, really, when people tend to talk about dividends of democracy, it's usually in the context of development. So access to social services, healthcare, education, infrastructure, blah-de-dee, Democracy, for me, is not a requirement for development. And as we can see from other countries that don't practice a democracy per se, I mean, Rwanda is always a good example of that. So they are also a democracy on paper, but President Kagame is not what most people would describe as a Democrat. They call him the term for it is benevolent dictator. But in terms of development, Rwanda checks quite a number of boxes. China is also an example. Even Singapore, that is often talked about. Yeah, you can have a whole discourse around what democracy looks like in Singapore. So in terms of dividends of democracy, if you think of it at that basic level, it's not because we're in a democracy or not in a democracy that we don't have that. But for Nigeria, I think what our 22-year history really speaks about is the challenge that we've had with leadership. Till today, the progress made under President Obasanjo is still often touted as sort of in our fourth republic, the best phase that we've had in terms of opening up businesses, freedom of speech and expression to the most degree, to a certain degree. And so as we've gone from President Obasanjo to President Yar'Adua, whose tenure was short-lived, President Jonathan, and now President Buhari, we haven't progressed, let me put it that way, in terms of these development indices. And I'm sure you've talked about that as you laid the context for this conversation. So if we then look at that, what then I would say is our biggest failing is our challenge of leadership. It's one in the way that we've paid attention to the political process that provides the people who then lead us, and not just at the federal level, at the state level. The states are just as complicit in this conversation. So my colleague is Adewale, who said he didn't agree with me, but then said for the most part, he would say that we haven't. So, I mean, I guess for me, I just said in summary. So obviously, maybe some states are doing better than others. But in summary, as a country, we're talking about Nigeria as an entity. So in summary, I think you ended up agreeing with me, even though you didn't start off with it. And that would be our challenge, I would say. One, a lack of leadership, visionary leadership. Who can say that this is a president that can say that this is what I want Nigeria to look like? Set the tone for the country, set the tone for Nigerians, regardless of where you're from, feeling like they're part of this entity and that we're on a shared journey to get to a destination that we've identified that we're going. So we've missed visionary leadership. We don't have a leader that's cast a vision that all of us can buy into. And underlying that is then that, as my friend Aisha Yusufu would say, you have Nigerians who feel they're more Nigerian than others. And so if I'm in a country where I don't feel a sense of justice by the fact that I'm a Nigerian, it spills over. You can't have security without justice. So that then affects us in other parts of how we live as a country. So our fault lines, I would say, one, lack of leadership, and that one is it's not for, in a sense, it's because we have not paid attention. We have not paid attention to the caliber, to the type of people that we elect to serve us, that we elect to lead us, number one. Number two, democracy as a system of government where it's the fact that it's citizens that put elected officials in power or in office is not taught. So your average Nigerian does not understand the powers that they have as a citizen. They don't understand that anybody and everybody who's in public office, in a sense, they're employee. So the dynamics of engagement between the governed and the governors, so the people who lead and the rest of the population, is more a relationship of deference to those in power. Obviously, that has changed significantly with the advent of social media in the last decade. So more Nigerians are understanding their powers, more Nigerians are expressing themselves. And that also has led us to where we are now, where government is pushing back heavily because Nigerians are upset and they are talking about it. And as someone says, they're framing it as a problem of a platform or social media or medium of communication, i.e. social media, but not addressing the issues that people are discussing on those platforms. And those are the issues. If Nigerians were happy and, as you said, had dividends of democracy, quote and unquote, there's education, there's job opportunities, there's all of that, there'll be nothing to vent about on Twitter. So Twitter will not be your problem. But because Nigerians are not happy, they are venting. But the government has framed it as a problem with the platform rather than the issues.
I want to bring Comrade Adewale in here. And it was Segun that said something I think we need to take a look at. The activities of one government do not form a democracy, do not a democracy make. A democracy continuously comes about by the vigilance of the citizens, by the attending to the rule of law, by making sure the democratic norms and, of course, citizens' rights are followed. And we're not seeing that in many ways. Yemi has also talked about the fact that we lack visionary leadership and that citizens themselves do not understand what it means to cast that vote when elections come around every 4 years. So, Comrade, in terms of political leadership and political vision for Nigeria. One of the security consultants earlier said there's no longer a Nigerian dream. Maybe in the 1960s and 70s, there was something of a Nigerian dream. But if you ask many young Nigerians now what the Nigerian dream is, it's to japa. We will not even lie. The Nigerian dream is to find any which way to leave the country. Is this solely a problem of leadership, or is there also the fault or the responsibility of the followership in this conversation as well?
Well, I must say that you cannot have good leaders without good followers. The leadership comes from amongst the followers. By the next election in 2023, you're going to have a lot of followers jostling to become leaders. If you don't have quality followership, then we are going to still be in this problem. I think the civil society, the media, like you have created a platform for this conversation, have a lot to do. And like I always tell people, during the life and time of Pa Imodu, he was the first Labour leader. He opined and said that there are two platforms to groom leadership: the student movement and the youth platform. If you miss either of these platforms, you are not going to have good leadership. If you look at politicians that came in the first republic, pre-independence, like the Obafemi Awolowo of this world, Nnamdi Azikiwe, the Saudana, and all of their likes, they started their journey as youth student leaders. They practice all of what leadership entails then, before they got the chance to get into contemporary society for leadership. And of course, the concept of ideology. Do we as Nigerians have a basic sense of an ideological concept? The question is no. If you go to the American society, they have two broad angles. It's either you are a Republican or you are a Democrat. Each of these bends have their ideologies. But for all Nigerians, I think the major thing we're still battling is for us to get out of this quagmire of poverty. And the more this confronts us as a people, as a nation, it stems our development down. So I think civil society, the media, needs to lean back a bit to the youth, where we get this pool of people that come to lead us. I was fortunate enough to be a student leader while I was in the university, and there we imbibed different forms of ideology and different political leaning and bends, and that molded us to what we have become today. And I can say likewise to the two of my colleagues that are speaking right now, would have got their own bend also while they were in the academic environment. So I believe that we need to also lean back more, especially the political parties. I know Mr. Sowunmi quite well. We've met at different fora. I respect his sense of belief. We must leave party leaning outside this. We must reach back even to our various political parties. How well do we go for retreats? I know quite well that in the First Republic politicians do go for seasonal retreats to talk about their programs and objectives and all that. Their followers also learnt from all of that. And you see them that when they come back again to handle the affair of states, they do it uniformly. It's not about individual thoughts. It's about the manifesto of the party that is well understood and well practiced by the elected representatives. And the people also read a lot, they listen a lot, and they discuss more. So I thank the media for creating such platform to bring people, but we need to groom the kind of leadership that we desire.
You know, talking about doing more, next year is the penultimate year to a general election. We're in the 22nd year of the Fourth Republic, and a lot of people will say, you know, it's just this same thing. It's a cycle. There's a flurry of activities around the penultimate year before an election, and we go back to re-electing the same type of leaders. Mr. Sowunmi, what can we do differently this time? How can we what do the citizens need to do to elect quality leaders, bear in mind the economic situation in the country? And yeah. all sorts of
Well,
inducements
thank you
that come
very
from
much.
politicians.
But let me go back a little bit before I come to my thoughts on that. When we entered this democracy in 1999, the fact that the country was handed over to a military or a former head of state in Olusegun Obasanjo by the party, my party then, that made us make a few missteps in what it means to be running civilian democracy. And the domino continued, small improvements here and there. The watershed moment for me that has brought us to this very painful place we are in now was the 2014 when a new political party was coming up called the APC. Although I was not part of that movement, I was quite hopeful that because some of the players there, the Bola Tinubus of this world, the Atikus and Coles and all of them, because they were Democrats, they understood what we went through together to get June 12, reversed, and we couldn't get it reversed and all that. I thought that they would sit at that table and take decisions that would lead the country in terms of its democratic practices in another direction. Up till now, if I see Bola Tinubu, the one question I will ask him is, look, Mr., how is it possible that when you got to 2014, 2015, again, you chose to give the platform to a military officer? Why am I saying this? We are all creatures of habit. We are not able to get out of the habits we created for ourselves. Military officers have a way of wanting it their way quickly, and all of that. So the democratic movement panders to, in our country, unfortunately, they believe the ethos, whatever it is that will pamper whoever we're calling leader per time. What should we do going forward? I have begged, I have admonished, I am still pleading that the only way we can get ourselves out of this mess is for the mass of the Nigerian people to join parties. I have not advocated join mine or join theirs. Just join the one you like. Therefore, we can then, knowing fully well that democratic organizations or countries, that the incubators for these ideologies that we're talking about are political parties. Because we don't have independent candidates and all of that. And there are practical steps that can make us understand whether this is a high-falutin idea that is going nowhere, or this is a chance that we can then begin to improve things. We need new people. We need people with new culture. We need people with new thinkings. We need people that, behave slightly differently. And if we have the numbers, let me go to the last election. Buhari got about 12-point-something million votes, 12 million 100 something. Atiku got, 15 million 100 something vote. Atiku got 11 million 100 something vote. The total number of available votes in Nigeria by the PBC is 85, 75 million thereabout. The numbers by which we are electing president is still significantly too low. It means that there is a large number of people in Nigeria who are eligible to weigh in via their vote who are not doing so. Therefore, I ask, if we are in a democracy which allows you to participate, which you can get your PVC and join any party you like, look at them at the grassroots, look at the things they've been saying to you, interrogate them, and you don't. What exactly are we expecting? As we are going to 2023, let me beg Nigerians, the era of we no go gree as the only way of making a point is over. Upon the loss of the ideological differentiation between the Soviets and the Americans, which made us have all of those isms that we were all driving on, which my friend Adewale was talking to and gave us some ideological, strong opinions that we carried on, that's carrying us through life, is gone. Almost everywhere you look, the parties look the same. Even in the same America, you can sometimes wonder, what's the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans? They're doing the same thing. Therefore, the biggest opportunity we have to stamp our own views and the way we want to be led is to participate. And whatever the media must do, Adewale, I agree with you totally on that. Whatever the media and civil society needs to do, they have to do more. Politicians like myself and Adewale, no matter our best intention, we carry the burdens of these political parties that we represent. But unfortunately, the political parties we represent, that's not all there is to us. It's just that you must belong to a political party. There are loads of things each of these parties are doing that I know Adewale does not agree with, and a lot of people know I don't agree with the law. But what are we going to do if we don't get numbers? Nigerians, if we are in June 12 and you want to advocate and riot or do whatever, and they're getting shot at, you are getting bullied. They're talking to us in a manner that they're even signaling to us that we should get ready for a civilian dictatorship. We now have an emergency. We need to rescue our country. To do that, we will have to be part of the process. Some of you need to contest. Some of you need to help out to raise money. Some of you need to bring new organizational capability. Some of you need to educate your cousins, your mother, everybody in the rural area, and let them understand. If it is democracy, they have themselves to blame for the quality of leaders they put forward.
Yemi, I have to come to you. There's a number of things that Segun has said, and I would love to get your response. I also want to add to it. He mentioned independent candidates. The power for Nigeria to have independent candidates rests with constitutional amendments, rests with electoral reform. That rests with the National Assembly. Elected Nigerians sit in the National Assembly. He also talked about the numbers, which is very true. From the previous elections, the numbers of Nigerians going out to vote are reducing. We've had this conversation throughout many years. I know EIE has been at the forefront of the register, select vote, and protect your vote movements for Nigerians. But as you look at 2023 and you look back at where we're coming from, are we ready to protect this democracy? They say that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Are we eternally vigilant to some of the faults that come with our democracy? Not necessarily just with the Buhari administration, but with successive governments. As he said earlier, it is not one government that makes a democracy. So recalling legislators is almost an impossible task. We're in the middle of constitutional reforms. Many Nigerians are not even aware of the review committees happening in some of their local governments. We have independent candidates not happening as well. There's so much. Yemi, you've seen the issues with the media. They're also saying that civil society organizations like EIE need to do more. What's left to be done?
Thank you, Tolu. As you've said, the conversation we've had over many years. And I think where I've come to today is I've played in this space for a decade now. And where I've come to right now is just that I'll say Nigerians are just not ready. And we're quite dishonest, really, about this desire for a different type of Nigeria. The people who lead us are not aliens. As Mr. Sowunmi said, they're from Nigerians. They didn't come from Niger even though there's a theory about that. But anyway, they didn't come from Niger or the moon or Mars. They're Nigerians. So that's number one. Number two, it's not a civil society media conversation. Honestly, from where it's a Nigeria conversation. And so when I speak to quite a lot of people, the effort, it's as if we're waiting, we're waiting for a messiah to come and solve this problem. So just somebody who will come, who will wave a magic wand and everything will be okay. But where we are now in 2021, leading up to 2023, for me, it's not just about elections, because we also spend a lot of time talking about voter education. But as Mr. Sowunmi also alluded to, very little time spent on political education in terms of what do we stand for? What do I believe? So a lot of Nigeria sort of Aluta will not agree constituency as split and leaning. So they don't think the state assets should be sold. I disagree with that. So if we have a protest and people say should return GSM companies should be owned by the Nigerian government, I completely disagree with that. So again, you have those divisions, but I respect the fact that they are clear about what the ideological pinning of their arguments are. For a lot of Nigerians, APC and PDP, they're 6 and half a dozen. They're the same, because it just how the cross carpet tells you that. So the fact that as a people, we don't have these conversations to understand, what do I believe? What is important to me? Is free enterprise important to me? Is it state-controlled assets? Is it state control of assets? Those kinds of conversations, as a people, we don't have. It's not embedded in our conversations around politics. So we focus more on election day voting, which then doesn't really mean much, because the person who is, Edo is a classic example. The person who was in APC at the last election won on the PDP's platform at the next election. What does that mean? It means that there really isn't any difference between the parties, I dare to say. Now,
okay, just
2023, I think for me,
Yemi, can we get you to let's get you to quickly just hold on. We want to touch base with our correspondent, Ben Akede. Please just hold on to that thought, Yemi. I apologize for interrupting. We're going to go to Bernard Akede right now, News Central's correspondent. He is roving around Lagos, checking the security situation. And Ben, can you hear us? Hello, Ben.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear, Tolu.
All right, so let us know where you are right now and what the situation. We can
Tolu,
see the heavy presence of police. I believe you're still around the Ikeja area. So what's going on?
All right, we're still around Yemi Park here at Ojota area in Lagos State. And, well, things quickly escalated from 0 to 100 in front of our eyes. It was very quiet when we got in here, as we reported initially. And then, well, you saw what happened earlier. Protesters eventually arrived. The police tried to separate the protesters from the press officials, but they all mixed in together. And then, well, canisters of tear gas were deployed. Gunshots were fired. We can't exactly make out if they were live rounds or if they were blanks, but gunshots definitely were fired. Now, the police was able to disperse the crowd, but what interestingly happened after that was that we had hoodlums, or should I say we had people from the area now even mixing up with the protesters, and the police had warned about this, so eventually the crowd got larger. But what even interestingly or more interestingly happened is the fact that the people from the popular Ojota Motor Park came here. I think the leaders. Now, we're not sure if it was the police leaders or just the motor park leaders who orchestrated this. The motor park leaders came in here, spoke to the crowd, and then the people from the park, the boys from the area, one by one began to disperse and leave the area. And then everywhere is quiet, as you can see now. It's just the police officers who are here at the moment. So what could have possibly escalated has really calmed down. So everything is peaceful. It's just members of the press, and then we have pockets of people looking from a distance.
Do you have any reports on the people who were arrested at the initial, I guess we'd say, fracas that happened at Yemi Park?
Yes, well, 2 or 3 of them whom I saw that were apprehended by the police eventually were released. They did complain that some of their personal effects were taken, particularly their phones, and then some of them spoke to the press. But eventually, as far as I know, they have all been released.
All right. Anything else?
no.
All right. Thank you so much, Ben. We'll, of course, be checking in with you. Heavy security presence there. Mary Chinda, who is also in Ayodele, has also reported that as well. Ijoma Esek around the Penn Cinema side of Lagos is also reporting a heavy security presence. So we will continue to touch base with our correspondents across Lagos, in Abuja as well, and outside of the major cities. Let's get back to our conversation. We are still with Comrade Adewale Ayodele. We also have Sowunmi with us and Yemi Adamalekun looking at Nigeria's politics as we celebrate or commemorate democracy. And Yemi, you were making a point about the situation that happened in Edo State when the governor was on one platform, and then went to the elections and changed platforms and won on a different platform in terms of how there's no ideological structure that sort of differentiates the main parties at the topmost level. I hope you can pick up from there.
Yes, thank you. So at the point I was also trying to make was that we have a lot of work to do. And so it's a young democracy, but we need to invest in educating citizens on what it means to have political parties with an ideological bent. And as a country, we haven't invested in that. I remember a number of years ago, I believe it was Yemi, who was trying to get the teaching of the Constitution to be a required curriculum for all Nigerians, and it was fought. So right now, if you're not doing history or whatever, unless I'm mistaken, there's no structure within the Nigerian educational curriculum that teaches citizens about their constitution and understanding their rights and their responsibilities. However, we're in 2021, and from the restructuring camp, the devolution of powers camp, the secessionist camp, the Nigeria is not working for me camp, people are now saying that the constitution is a problem. I tend to align with Mr. Agbakuba's point that yes, there are issues with the Constitution, but if you had someone with sense in leadership, it can actually work and we can tweak it, but that it could actually work to deliver for the most part. But the way it is and the way it's been used over the years, Nigerians have lost confidence in the Constitution. So we start off with the fact that it starts with we the people, we didn't write it, and I get it. But I think ultimately it's not just about the language of it, which I'm not dismissing the importance of. But if the Constitution was actually applied with sense, people would pay less attention to the construct of we the people. But because they don't feel that it speaks to them or don't feel that it makes them feel Nigerian, then we then begin the conversation around who actually wrote the Constitution, what was the intent, how does it reflect Nigeria. So part of the conversation that I'm quite excited about is that, look, all this money we're spending on constitutional reform, I believe I saw an article that said the whole process is going to cost us 5 billion naira, or has cost us 5 billion naira. That why we keep doing this, because there's now such a lack of faith in the Constitution and what it represents as a Nigerian entity, that there should be a single issue amendment to the Constitution. And that amendment should just be to include provisions for a referendum that allows citizens to then speak very clearly of, do we want to write a new constitution? Yes, no. And if it's yes, put in the process to do exactly that. And as I'm sure you guys covered this, Senate hearings across the country, there are just a myriad of issues that people are raising about how the Constitution does not reflect the Nigeria they want to live in 2021. And I'm not quite sure how that conversation will happen in parallel with planning for a 2023 election. I can see coming up in the next couple of months, people saying that if this constitutional issue is not dealt with, then we will not have elections in 2023. It will be interesting to see.
Yes, and Mr. President earlier today did say he's not averse to constitutional amendment. And as we said, the process is ongoing in 6 geopolitical zones. Back to you, Comrade Ayodele, what are the biggest issues? Everybody, before the constitutional amendment, it was restructuring, but you can't restructure without a constitutional amendment. What should be the priority issues and what is actually faulty in the current constitution?
Well, the major priority issue now, as you can see, is security. Whatever it is, we must do whatever it takes to make sure that we can douse the tension. And the only way you can do this is the opportunity to bring everybody to the table to discuss. I was privileged to be part of those who organized and ran the last process headed by Chief Anthony Anahoro of Blessed Memories, known as the Pro-National Conference Organization. We did organize a conference, and we came out with a draft constitution for Nigeria. Chief Anahoro was chairman, Professor Sowunmi was vice, Dr. Becker was deputy. I was mobilization and liaison officer, and we went far and near to get people to organize themselves to the extent that memorandums were submitted, plenaries were organized, and people proceeded. And Professor Jadesala Akonde, OFR, of Blessed Memories, put up all of this draft together to a working document. I have been following this, the National Assembly amendment and all of that, and what readily strikes my mind is everybody that have been coming with a position paper, how many of them have gone back to their various interest groupings to organize a program for their people to talk and come out with a position that is acceptable to all of their members? For instance, the NMA, even the media, the students, the organized private sector, the police, and inclusive of the nationality groupings. How many of them have sat with their people? Majorly what you see is few people coming up with their own thoughts, how they feel things should be like, and go to that particular forum to put forward a paper that does not even reflect the views, collective views of their people. At the end of the day, that document we put together, taken back to the National Assembly, and it will be tested by number. The issue of number also comes into play because this is democracy. The highest number will take the day. And whatever that comes out of that process might not be agreeable, for instance, to the agitator of Masob, or perhaps the ASU, or even the market women, or even different other political parties. So I think the system needs to be well worked in such a way that before this kind of process is put in play, there must be a grand norm that we put on the table, and everybody follows that grand norm that will attract all of their members towards agreeing on a position. And when that position is brought forward also, the politician must also understand that you need to align views. You need to align views, you need to shift ground, give and take. It's not a process where my own view must be the dominant view now if we intend to achieve the kind of peace that we want. We need to make sure that every corner, every interest of Nigeria control their resource. If they don't control their resource, we're going to have a problem. We need to also make sure that square pegs are put in square holes. Even if you come up with a document, a perfect document for Nigeria, who is going to implement it? If you don't have eggheads to implement that document, then we will have a problem. Even if we have the best of constitution, you are still going to need people that will make it, meaningful in terms of applying it to all of our human development strata that will give us the nation that we desire.
Segun, let me come to you. So we've heard from Yemi when she said that this is not a Nigerian media or civil society conversation, it's a Nigerian conversation. You've been very passionate in laying out your terms in terms of how we need to face 2023. But I want to go back a little bit because I've heard from two of you references to the First Republic. And I think it's interesting that at this stage and time in Nigeria's history, some of our best references for good politicians, for visionary political leadership is still referencing the First Republic, bar a few exceptions that we've seen here or there. So I need to ask, what do you think that says about us, that from the time of independence to now, through the military regimes, the return to democracy in 1999, that for many people, the reference for, or the barometer for good political leadership, for visionary leadership, that takes the people where they don't even know that they need to go, has still remained the First Republic, that there seems to be a dearth of good leadership right now?
Well, I don't think that there is a dearth of good leadership right now. Let me just tell you what I think is happening with that particular narrative. Generational champions come onto the stage and they react to the issues of the time. And depending on how profound those issues are, they will now become almost like immortal men because of their words. The issues that Nigerians dealt with in the First Republic was the kind of issues that could have given them that kind of opportunity. They had to deal with getting us independence and what have you. What I see as a major problem in the present time is that the world is now so flat. More people have access to information. They have the ability to see what's going on in other climes. When they look at China and the report coming out of China, they don't hate China that much anymore. When they look at England and they look at America and all of that, so people can see, and then they have themselves and they look at their own reality in the country. And because some of our political leaders have imagined that the weaponization of poverty is the tool by which they manipulate the people to agendas that are very funny, we have a continuous and constant conversation around, oh, the constitution is not good. Oh, we the people didn't write it. As if 200 million people can write the constitution. So I think that the things that we need to do now, if God will give us the grace or strength to be able to do it, is one, we need to find out what exactly is the vision that all Nigerians can buy into and also situate themselves in as to the responsibility they have to carry that vision out. There are ways to achieve that. The second thing is this. I've always been scared that when we talk about constitutional review in this country, if we're not even careful, we're going to be taking one draconian set of elites that are in power today and be replacing it with another set of draconian elites that want to be in power tomorrow. I ask you, how could Nigeria leave military dictatorship, lose Abiola, lose Kudera, lose Rwanda and all of that, and then power gets handed over to the Nadeko and the agitator generation of that time, and 22 years down the line, we have been in democracy, look at what we have. It would have been excusable if our issue was just the federal government. But can you truly tell me that you're happy with all the state governors? Can you tell me that you're happy with the State House of Assembly? Can you tell me that you're happy with the way we even interpret the rules of local government? Can you tell me that you are inspired by the kind of people that these leaders are pushing into the National Assembly to ventilate on national issues? Of course, the answer is no. So it means we have a problem. And now we are at a ground zero. We need to reset. Why? We have a population that's very large. We have a very large unemployment number. That means that all the the ammunition you need for the kinds of continuous agitation and quarrel and bring them out and scatter things is here with us. How do we get out of it? In my opinion, we can do a double-blind survey, go through all the nooks and crannies of Nigeria, reduce it into the languages, as many languages as we need to reduce it into, get them to give us an idea of their answers to a few questions. What do you mean about state police? What do you mean about resource control? What do you mean about the power of federal government? All of those issues we talk about, get them to be collated. What you are going to find is that there will be a lot of commonality in the middle. Once you get the commonality, get constitutional drafting experts to draft a constitution that will resemble the commonality. Market the same thing. If you want to do a referendum, give a 2-year date or a 1-year date or whenever you want to do the referendum. Tell the pro-Nigerian people to market themselves and their ideology and persuade us, and tell the secessionists to market themselves and persuade us. And just like they did with Brexit, on one day that would have all agreed, we would then go and do it and see what the result is and move on from there. What we are doing with ourselves is that we're reducing a great nation that has a lot of potential to inspire Africans everywhere in the world to a sorry example of its own preeminence. We are not a country that does not have sharp and brilliant people. We see them in Europe. We see them even in Nigeria. We see them in a lot of Bretton Woods organizations. We see them in the academia. Our issue is that because the vast majority of Nigerians are not paying enough attention to the issue of governance, especially in the democracy, we have now been hijacked by cabals at different levels. In the party, a set of cabal will be the ones deciding who can go, who cannot go, who must move, who must not move. At the federal level, at the government level, we have created, instead of a democratic governance, we have created what I like to call a civilian monarchy, where leaders must bow to, their thinking is the right thinking. How can a president in a modern Nigeria be described? If the Igbos are agitating, and you want to use an adjective to describe them, call them a dot within a circle, would that not even make the issues and make the situation worse? Could you not find better arguments? Could you not find things that could reach out to them and be a bit more rapprochement to them? And could you not say something differently? But hello, no man can give what he doesn't have. Okay. We have seen it by ourselves that we are struggling. Some are struggling more than others. People are leaving the country and trying to leave. Some are in the country and just living every day with the fear of what can happen with insecurity. How can you tell me that in this country that we all can see, we're still needing somebody to convince us on the rightness of giving power to state governors to run police? If our issue is that we think that they will abuse it, we can remove some immunity from them. We can give them some power by way of giving them opportunity of state police and all that, and then we can go back and remove some of the immunity so that they know very well that there will be consequences. But hello, we cannot be a nation of 200 million or whatever our number is, with the number of universities, number of high institutions, the number of smart people that we have in this country, and we'll be throwing up our hands in the air for everything that is so simple and we can understand. If only we will not insist that my view is the only view that must exist in the land.
Just before we wrap things up on this segment of politics, I'd like to bring in Yemi here. Segun did mention a few poignant points. He talked about how Nigerians are not too happy with the governors and elected representatives. There are over 1,500 elective offices in Nigeria that govern a nation of 200 million people. But we notice that there's a lot of attention on Abuja. The political center of gravity is Abuja. Democracy is not just electing a president and moving on. Why do we have a situation? You do a lot of political education, a situation where everybody feels, you know, the problem of the country, the genesis and the solution to it is Abuja. And this takes attention away from other elected officials and governors especially. What's your response to that?
And Yemi, we'll use that as your final thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's not surprising. I mean, the popular adage says the fish rots from the head. So looking to the sort of, in a sense, head of government for leadership, for direction, it's not really surprising at all. And if I remember a panel that I was on, and an APC member asked the governor of Kaduna that the president is serving at the, in a sense, representing APC, because we don't vote for individuals, we vote for political parties, that why can't the members of the party, the leadership of the party, the state governors, speak to Mr. President around the way he's handling some issues. And Malame Rufai did not miss a beat in explaining that, one, we don't run a textbook democracy, and that, no, we cannot speak to Mr. President because we need to be mindful of our culture, yadidi, yadida. So I think if that's the posture of your state governors, that they cannot speak to the person who's at the top, it's significant in terms of signaling and the message that is sent. And also we talked about it, I think it was either Comrade Adewale or Mr. Sowunmi that talks about the fact that in implementation, we don't really function as a federal republic. We function as a unitary state. So because we function as a unitary state, and directions and instructions and permissions, quote and unquote, have to be gotten from Abuja, it's not rational that people focus on Abuja. Yes, Mr. Falana makes the point that at least in a state like Lagos, the law has been used to take some of those permissions back. But also from the perspective of citizens, and I'll use EIE's context, when we talk about national issues, I can get people from Yobe to Imo to amplify the issue because it affects, the focus on Abuja affects everybody. But if I'm talking about things happening in Imo, people will tend to ignore it because they're not in Imo. So the noise reduces drastically. So imagine the amplified voices in 36 states on a federal issue versus just people in one state trying to talk about an issue. So it's, and again, the mobilization and the discussion of some of these issues are done by civil society organizations who have limited resources and limited scope. So it's also from a purely efficient point of view that we tend to focus on Abuja. But I do agree that a lot has to be done at the state level. Pressure needs to be put on states to step up to the security conversation. And we see some of it as why you have Amotekun in the southwest and the Eastern Bloc also responded with their own version of it. But at the heart of it, from federal to state level, is the lack of political will to do the right things by the people. So when the people are educated about their rights and responsibilities, and then take on that to put the people who they have hired to work on the spot, then we can begin to change the dynamics a little bit. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Yemi. Comrade Adewale, just to give you an opportunity as we wrap up the conversation as well, we've talked about political structure, we've talked about political leadership, and Yemi now has brought in the issue of political will as well. In terms of where Nigeria is going in terms of politics and its democracy, what do you think? If you can give me just 1 minute.
Well, I think Nigeria is going to a very good destination. People are more aware of their rights and they're more aware on how they want the country to be governed. And the awareness is growing, and I love that concept. And elected leaders must also understand that the game is up, whereby you do things the way you want it be done. The consciousness and even the way the electoral processes is going now is even narrowing the opportunity to have people rig the elections. And as much as this is happening, you're going to start having some quality leadership administration. But all I would say is that the best thing we can do is to continue to discuss on this matter rather than creating violence all over the place.
All right, so a very big thank you there. Let's say thank you to our guest, Comrade Adewale Ayodele, the immediate past chairman of Amuodofin local government, as well as political analyst, Segun Sowunmi as well, politician, for joining us, and Yemi Adamalekun, executive director of Enough is Enough Nigeria, one of the foremost civil society organizations in the country.